Today we're going to talk about FreeNAS. Familiarize you with the interface. So let's get started. So here we are in the beginning. This is your basic interface for FreeNAS, the login screen. Now there's still a button here for the legacy interface. You'll see probably a lot of videos that show this UI that looks completely different. That's the legacy interface. The new interface has been rewritten. They've kind of been working on it for a little while. It's ready for prime time, and everybody should be using now. So your username is going to be root, and then the password that you pick, and then go ahead and just log in. So I'm going to zoom back out here just real quick. This is what it looks like by default, and this came up with a dark interface. And so I'm going to talk to you about these little panels here first. First panel here up in the corner is you're like, hey, this is the machine and this is information about it and all that good stuff. You got a little button here you can check for updates. And then on this other one here is your network interfaces. The next one down is memory usage and CPU usage. These are basically just these cards that show you information. Okay, hold on. Not sure what's going on there. Yeah, cards that just show you the information. We'll scroll down here. These are the ones that are basic ones. They're not populated yet because it's either figuring that stuff out, or it may not 100% work correctly being virtualized like this. But see, this is a dark theme. If you see this little paint bucket here, you can change your themes. This one is IX dark. You can do the blue one. I'll show you that. It's a lot brighter. Dracula, solarized dark, solarized light. Wow, that hurts. High contrast. And then you can create your own. I'm going to go back to the dark because what I like. Just to point out a couple things here, you have this alerts. If there are things that that you need to be alerted for, they'll pop up there. Like for example, if one of the USB boot drives is popping up errors, or if a hard drive is popping up errors, you're going to see those alerts pop up right there. And you've got the gear icon, which gives you settings. Show your account, your password, preferences, about, legacy web interface. And then you can also use the power here. On the left hand side is where most of the things you're going to do are. You've got this little hamburger menu which will shrink that guy and not show it. And you can also collapse it down to a little. So that being said, let's go ahead and look at this first one, which dashboard is where we're at now. Accounts. That's a menu that expands. Users, you will see the default users. If you're familiar with Unix, Linux, you're going to see users in here. Root, which is who we're logged in as, and then groups, similar thing. It's just like any Unix type of operating system. System. Under General, this is where you can configure a few things. Let me make this a little bigger again here. Yeah, that's a little bit more readable for everybody. You can select HTTPS or HTTPS both. Many of the interfaces has this little question marks, which kind of gives you information about what they are. The web GUI doesn't have to listen on all IP addresses. It can listen on specific IP addresses. When it says 0000 like this, that means it's going to be listening on all interfaces. You can select this guy and see, like, for example, if we just this IP address that we have, if we wanted to only listen on that. Generally speaking, I don't change that unless I need to. Example reason why you might want to need that is if you're running some other services on here that require the HTTP or HTTPS ports. So you might want it to listen on one IP address for your configuration GUI that we're looking at here, and then and then maybe have some other IP addresses that aren't accessible. One reason why you might want to do this is maybe you have dual NICs in your FreeNAS, and you're in an IT environment where you have a managed network and then a user network. So the user network is a storage network where everybody is accessing the files, and that's say it's like 192.168.1. something network, but you don't want those end users to be able to even get to the web configuration GUI of FreeNAS. So you could set it up to listen on your second network card, which is your management network, and then the user network, it's just completely not accessible. So that's just an example. Right here we're going to go, and the first thing we're going to look at, there's other things. You can change your language. English is great for me. Keyboard maps, time zone, pick your time zone. I am not in Los Angeles. I'm going to go up here and choose the central time zone, which is Chicago here. That'll get us on the same map there. Debugging levels, syslog server. If you have a syslog server, you can check that out. All right, then just save your configuration. It'll take just a second to do that. It'll have to restart stuff. Check the box, continue. It's a really nice, clean interface. I think they wrote it in Angular, I believe. So if you're a web designer, web guy, Angular UI. So Angular is what they're using here, I believe. So let's go ahead and look at the next. So NTP servers. So those are network time protocols. So it's important in your servers to make sure they have accurate timing. So by default, it's going to use the FreeBSD ones. Unless you have some reason to change them, don't bother changing them. Boot environments. This is something that's wonderful about FreeNAS. So you see down here in this environments there, you got default, initial install. When you do upgrades and patches and stuff, it will create images, boot environments. So when I go and I install the next major update, what is it, 11.3, there'll be 11.3 install on here. But if I need to, I can actually go back here and select one of these other boot environments and boot off of it. It's pretty neat thing. A couple of these other things, scrubbing the boot pool status. We're not going to go over those, but maybe later on in a more in-depth one. But you get the basic information about your stuff here. Let's see. I don't know. Yeah. So in this boot environment, so I have two of them here already. You can go and you see these ellipses. You can clone it, rename it, activate it, keep it, or delete it. So depending on what. So if you wanted to activate it, so that's if you needed to roll back to a previous version of the operating system. Basically, that's where you do it, activate, and then you can do it on boot. So it's pretty neat stuff there. So we're moving on to the next advanced section. Generally speaking, you don't need to get in here for a whole lot. This enables serial console. Is if you don't have a VGA card or a video card installed in this thing, you can use serial port, use PuTTY or something like that to access the UI to it. And there's nothing special here to talk about. Emailing. If you need to set up email, here it is. Like I said, that's for notifications and things like that. System data set. Nothing really to talk about here either. Alerts. All right, I was speaking about the alerts up here. Here we go is alert services. You can edit them. This is SNMP, email, alert settings. And this is a bunch of settings on when you will get these alerts and the different types. Immediately, hourly, daily, never. Cloud credentials. This is an important one. say Cloud Credentials is going to be for things such as maybe you want to take this FreeNAS and this is your business FreeNAS or even your home FreeNAS, and you want to make sure that this data is safe and backed up elsewhere. So yeah, just, you know, in the IT area, you know, people say, oh, well, you know, my system is safe, it's rated. RAID is not backup. It is redundant, yes, but it's not a backup. So you can go in here and you add Cloud Credentials and say you want to back up to Amazon S3 or Backblaze or Wasabi or one of these other backup services where you can just store buckets. You can go to Add and pick the name of the provider. Here's a list of providers: Amazon S3, Backblaze, Box, Dropbox, FTP, Google Cloud Storage, Google Drive, HTTP. I don't know what that one is. Azure, Microsoft OneDrive, pCloud, SFTP, WebDAV, Yandex. So there's quite a few that are just built in there automatically. So I'm going to hit Backblaze here, and so if you have Backblaze B2, you can use your keys and install them here, and then that will save a credential, which can be used to schedule syncing of the information on your FreeNAS to a backup, so that if and when disaster happens and your FreeNAS box gets hit by lightning or something like that, that your data is safe because it's backed up at a cloud provider. Okay, so we'll talk more about that in another video. This is just an overview of kind of the stuff in here. Tunables. Generally speaking, you want to stay out of here unless you really have some specific reason to be in here, and then you need to tweak a setting to make it work better for your stuff. Updates. This is a good one. This is one that I take a look at a lot. So first of all, you have a checkbox here for when to check for updates. And then this drop down box here is the path that you want to be on. So as a FreeNAS user, you are allowed to use the production versions or like a release candidate version, or maybe more unstable versions of nightly builds if you want to be on the cutting edge. I don't recommend this for production, by the way. If you are doing production, you have data that you need to keep safe, secure, and happy, and stay in the stable channel. But if you choose to, you can go otherwise. And you can do updates manually. So the little refresh icon, you click on it, it'll look for updates. We just installed this, so there won't be any, but you'll see updates here. CA, Certificate Authorities. This is if you need to do any kind of certificates, like SSL certificates or things, self-signed certificates in your FreeNAS. The authorities are for the self-signing stuff. And then the actual certificates, which is the next one down, are the certificates that either you are installing from, that you purchased, or that you are created as a self-signed. And when you go to add here on this type, internal certificate, CSR, certificate signing request, that's what you're going to do if you want an actual signed certificate that passes the mustard, and you need to send it somewhere like GoDaddy or Namecheap or wherever you're getting your certificates from. They're going to want a CSR, and this is how you get that. Import a certificate if you already have your cert and you want to just get it into the system. This is where you do it from here. Fill all the information out appropriately when you need to do your CSRs. All right, so moving down to support. There's a support page if you have support from IX Systems. So that is our Systems tab, Tasks. I'm gonna go over these a little bit quicker because I feel like I'm running out of time here. So cron jobs. If you have scheduled, so this whole task is about tasks. if you need scheduled snapshots or syncing to the cloud for your backups, things like that. This is where it happens. Smart tests for your drives, things like that. Now, network. This is all about the network for your computer, for the FreeNAS box. And you can the name of the box, the domain, name servers, so on and so forth. This one I'm doing DHCP, so it's not a big deal. Interfaces, you can add. If you want to select, you'll see that EM0 is the only one that shows up there, but if multiple ones, you can do that here. Link aggregations, network summary. Network summary says, hey, this is the IP address, this is the routes, all that good stuff. You can set static routes. You can do VLAN stuff. Boom. Storage. Now, this is where you work on the hard drives. I've got 3 or 4 hard drives, and this is how you set them up. That's what we do in the storage pool area. Directory services. If you want to connect this guy to Active Directory or some other LDAP service, something like that, that's where you do it right here. Sharing. This is the big thing. It's a NAS, network storage. You're gonna be making network shares probably. If you use Apple, Unix NFS shares, WebDev, Windows Samba shares, which is just normal Windows shares. Block storage for iSCSI. And then under services, these are all the services. So like a lot of those sharing services, shares, we're going to show up in here too. So like AFP, Apple File, iSCSI, NFS, Samba, that sort of stuff. But there are more. FTP, S3, like Amazon S3. So you can make this present as an S3 bucket. SSH, you need SSH, TFTP, WebDev. Those things are all available. Plugins. These are an important thing. If you want to take this machine beyond the basics of a NAS, plugins are where it's at. Go ahead and click available. It's not going to show up because I haven't created any pulls yet, but there are lots of options. Jails, which is sort of related to the plugins. Reporting. This is a good one here. So you go and you take a look and it'll see your CPU information. You can do disks. You'll see what the disks are saying. Memory usage. Several things here as you can go. I haven't created any pulls yet. Virtual machines. Yes, FreeNAS has virtual machine capabilities. Now, BSD and FreeNAS it's kind of a little behind when it comes to virtualization when it's compared to Linux KVM or even Hyper-V on Windows. But that doesn't mean it's not capable of doing this. It's not as polished, and you might have to put a little more effort into it to do things, and you might run into some roadblocks. But it is capable. Here we go. System processes. This is kind of like top in Linux. Shell. You can go to the shell. Like df-h. Boom. There's the hard drives. And then this is great. Whoops. Let me just go back. Down at the bottom here is guide. So if you need to learn how to do things in FreeNAS, go ahead and just click on that button. And then hello. Here is their user guide for FreeNAS. And you can go through all the things where they explain stuff. This is a great resource. So that takes us to the beginning. All right, so that's a basic overview of the interface. Now let's get in there and make some storage. So we go to storage, and let's click on disks, and I say, oh, there we go. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 disks in here. So what do I do with them? What does that mean, 5 disks? So let's just take a look. You can edit them, see all that stuff. So DA 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's interesting. Let's go here and go to System, General, where? Boot environment. Yeah, that's what I looked. All right, so look at here, pool status. DA0 and DA1. So those two drives, the 0 and 1, are your boots. So when we go back down here, storage and disks, these two guys, you know, what do you do with those? So let's go to pools, none. Let's go to add, create a new pool. All right. So we're going to call this pool, what do we want? We'll call it tank. It's very common to call it tank in here. Encryption. Yes, you can do encryption. And ZFS does a great job on that. So picking drives. So if you pick 1, 2, and then you go over here, it's going to select this right here, a mirror as default stripe. So if you're familiar with RaidZ, you know, this essentially is going to mirror them, stripe it there. So, but say that I want to add a third disk there, put that over there. Oh, looky there, it turns to RaidZ. And you say, well, RaidZ, what is that? RaidZ is more or less the equivalent of RAID 5 in regular RAID terms. So there's also RaidZ 1 or 2 and 3 and so on and so forth. And that basically just means that, so this RaidZ, 2 of these drives are going to store the information. So the way it works is it takes a parity, a checksum of the data. So when you write a file, it's going to write that file to 2 of the drive, on 2 of those drives, and the third drive is going to have checksum data for that. So if one of those drives goes out, you have all the data. And so it varies them across those 3 drives. It gives you the ability to lose one drive and not have disaster. So you can add cache and log files and even the spare to this. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to choose RaidZ and click create. All the data will be erased. Confirm. Nice UI. And that'll take just a second. And there you have. By the way, compression is on, so it will do some compression of your data. So if you're storing text data, it'll be shrunk down. That's great. So now, when I go over here to disks, you'll still see those, but see this pool? Boot pool, tank. So you know where those drives are being used. And everything is awesome. So here's where you start doing permissions and data sets. But let's get you up and going real quick. Let's just go and create a data set on this guy. We're going to call it WinShares. And it's going to be a Windows data set. And we'll leave everything else the same and click Save. So there you have it. There's that data set. So let's go down into sharing and Windows and go ahead and click Add. We're going to click the path. Boom, boom, boom. There it is. We're gonna click Allow Guest Access for this purposes, just so that you can see it. So if you look at that, actually it's disabled in Windows. So yeah, whatever. We're gonna leave it off and click Save and see what we got going on here. And it goes ahead and says, hey, enable service. What that is enabling the SMB service down in the server side. So here's services, and if you scroll on down to SMB, you'll see that it's on. Now if we go and click on the configure, you can see information about how that's configured. We're not going to go into that right this second. What I want to do is go and see if we can see this machine. So FreeNAS right here. Shows up. And Okay, so what you have to do in order to get this to work on WinShares is you need to go up here to user accounts, go to users, and go ahead and create yourself a new user. I just got a bit Win user, and when you do that, you want to give it whatever you want the username to be, password, new group, check this box for a Microsoft account. I've already done that. And then you need to go down to your storage pool and that new share you created right there, and go ahead and go to the permissions, edit those permissions, and make sure that you change the user to nobody and the group to that new group you created. And then hit save. Once you've done that, let me pop this over here. Yeah, that IP address, and then type in win user and that password you created, and there's your share. All right, now in theory, hopefully I'll be able to create a folder and delete a folder. Yes, and that's all there is to it, to getting started. Stay tuned next time. We'll go into more in depth about shares and different things you can do with FreeNAS. Thanks for joining me.